Welcome back to the SG Weekly Talk Show here. Special guest, Steve Delaney of Yard Boss. Steve is one of the members at our Masterminds group that we formed probably a little going on almost 2.5 years ago. Steve and I had met before at some of the Service Autopilot conferences, but really have got to know Steve and the inner workings of his business. I couldn't think of anybody better to bring on to the SG Weekly Talk Show this week because Steve's been doing some really interesting things. And really starting to become a national influencer, in my opinion, within the group. One of our 7-figure business coaches, as well as hanging out with the Masterminds group. So, Steve, if people haven't heard about you, met you at any of the conferences, you mind just breaking down kind of a little info about yourself, the business Yard Bosses out of Lincoln, Nebraska, and how you cut your teeth in the green industry. Most of us don't plan on making our final career choice mowing lawns and fertilizing. So it's usually interesting how we got into this whole thing.
Yeah. So again, Steve from Lincoln, Nebraska. We are currently running a primarily fertilizer, weed control, plant health, pests, and we do some Christmas lights. We got into Christmas lights to get out of the chaos of the snow. And that plan is still unraveling. We haven't fully cut snow, but that's the last thing we haven't cut. So I've got a story very typical of most people in the industry. I started mowing grass when I was a kid because I could mow grass on Saturdays and make more money than working every night at a fast food joint or grocery store or something of that nature. Out of high school, mowing lawns didn't seem sexy, so I went to school for architectural engineering and very quickly dropped out of that and got a turf degree because I knew that mom and dad would not be happy if I did not get a degree. So I went and did that, started on the business side of it, was very arrogant, saying I've got accountants to handle this stuff, that sort of thing, and dropped out of the business school, which honestly brought me full circle about 15 years later when I got involved with coaches like Jason Cupp and Jonathan and yourself and all this stuff, realizing that knowing the numbers was really important. And then, so for a long while, we did everything. We mowed, we landscaped, we fertilized, we irrigation, install irrigation service, the whole bit. And then in 2019, made the decision after finding a networking group, the original academy, that there was a path to do fert only. And we just started dialing each service back every year, dumping a couple $100,000 in revenue and replacing it. And this year we're finally what I call fert and weed only. I know it's pest and plant health are not technically fert and weed, but they're still chemical services.
I love it. Bringing sexy back with a college degree, brother. I love it. So It's all about having a little fun here. I'll admit the same exact thing. Mom and dad were like, dude, you better get a degree. Help you pay for it a little bit, but had to pay for most of it. But it was something that was a must. But, looking back on it, I think school probably taught me time management. Outside of that, it really wasn't applicable to the real world of business. So kind of the school of hard knocks and lining up folks with Jonathan Potoshnik, a lawn care millionaire, co-founder, Service Autopilot Academy, Jason Cupp, obviously friend of the show as well. So probably very similar going into it. But one of the things that you touched on in 2019 is you had a pretty good makeup of fertilization and weed control, but mainly full maintenance, lawn care, landscape maintenance. And dropping that revenue intentionally to get into more of a reoccurring revenue. The mindset, what were the thoughts in, kind of what was the exact timing of that to be able to make that stable? I mean, some of the folks that hang out with us sometimes at the live events, Garrett Matthews over at Shreveport with Matthews Tree and Pest. I think Garrett literally cold turkey dropped over $1 million with the design build in a weekend, literally. Obviously, most of us don't have the nerve or the bandwidth or the finances to do that. So what did that look like in that journey? Was there a certain breaking point or something you saw that kind of sent you down that road?
So honestly, I accidentally ended up at a conference, an SA conference, thinking I was going to learn the software because I had ran into another guy friend of the show, Ted Glazer. And he basically told me, standing in a mower shop, you got to find software. We had just done our first small acquisition, about $100,000 in maintenance and fertilizer revenue. And I could no longer manage, I know that Mrs. Jones is next to Mrs. Smith, put it on the Excel spreadsheet. And I went down there thinking I was learning how to run the software on a whim, bought a ticket off of Facebook from a guy who couldn't make it. and realized it was a business development conference and networked with people that told them that my dream had always been to do fertilizer. And they're like, well, you need to network with this guy and that guy. And, on down the list of all the, Brandon, Jonas, Jeff Gause, all those people that were heavily involved in that and in there. And eventually did network with them and figured out what the path was. And it was scary at first, but the turning point was when we finally got our numbers straight. And we broke everything out divisionally. Like, what was the labor expense on landscaping? What was the equipment overhead on landscaping and mowing and, irrigation and everything down the list? And we're looking at it and we're like, geez, this takes 90% of our effort, but it represents 10% of our profit. Like, what are we doing here? And it's not fun anymore. It's, the design build was the easiest to get rid of because it had become not fun anymore. There were labor challenges for us. There was, you need skilled laborers, right? To do design build. You need masons because we weren't just like doing enhancements. We were doing full outdoor kitchens. We were doing fire pits, outdoor patios, pavers, like all that sort of stuff. Big retaining walls, what we were trying to cut our teeth on. And it just wasn't working for us.
I assume that kind of work really, were you able to walk away from that, or were you needed on a daily basis for those projects?
I was in there every day managing the projects, doing the designs. And that's where the landscaping and turf degree came in is, I knew all the plants, I knew the materials. I spent all this time on continuing education as the hardscape stuff changed. And I was designing them, meeting with the clients, managing the projects. And then, when the customer's paying you $30, $40, $50,000 to design their outdoor space, they feel like they've got you. So they get home at 9:00 after ball games and they're like, oh, this isn't what we thought, or we want to go another 20 feet on this patio. And you're like solving that problem because if you don't solve it tonight, the guys are going to go do something else that's going to put the project further behind or further in the wrong direction. And it just got to a point where I didn't love it anymore. And so that was easy. We actually terminated that at the end of summer because we had a bunch of high school and college help on our general labor there. That was also the toughest to get rid of because we did have to tell some people that you either have to move to a different division, take a pay cut, or I have a handful of people in the industry that are looking for your skills and your talents, and I'd love to set you up with it. That was a very tough decision, especially in August. A lot of people do this stuff in the middle of winter when people are already laid off and things like that. But it just made sense for us to do that because we were also headed into aeration season. There was one person that we wanted to retain, and we moved that person to become our aerate guy, start trying to drum up some more sales and stuff like that. And then his natural progression was the very next year to become an applicator, put us at 2 applicators.
Awesome. So hitting on design build, that makes sense. I mean, that's one of the mistakes that I see a lot of folks make, at least in my opinion, that instead of going after and cutting, like they may go in and cut the reoccurring revenue at first, like lawn mowing or landscape maintenance. I think the logical part is probably take that one-time revenue and replace it with the recurring, or at least cut that out first because it's less liability. But I know you had a pretty sizable mowing division as well. From understanding what you're saying, you kept that intact and then actually, as a ratio, dropped it and replaced it, or was it just a full swing? We got rid of the mowing just like we did design build.
No, that's an interesting story in of itself too. So we quit putting the energy into it. So we had 2 crews that were maxed out, and we were running at the height of the mowing. We were running probably 350, 400 in annual revenue on the mowing and the cleanup, and very little bit of enhancements they would do, pulling weeds and trimming shrubs and stuff. And we quit putting the energy into it, and it just kind of kept dialing down like a dimmer switch. And then before you knew it, the last year we had it, we were running 1 3-man crew, then we were running 1 2-man crew. And actually last year in our annual meeting, we're like, what are we doing about mowing? Nobody's putting any energy into it with office manager, operations, and myself. And we got stuck for a half a day on what are we doing with mowing? We know what the ultimate plan is, but it was still making money and providing the distraction. Now that had become the 90% distraction because, as everybody knows, there's more gutters ran over, fences, the light pole didn't get weed eated, weather delays, you got 5 days of work and it rains for 2 days, like all that sort of stuff. And we're trying to run these businesses where if anybody's got applicators people, they understand that applicators are, I affectionately call them the divas of the industry. They like to work with their brain rather than their brawn. And so like when you get in a pinch, you're like, hey, applicators, you're coming over here to go mow. Not only are you losing production, you're also losing some of that culture, and they're not, happy doing that. And so we're trying to run these two different businesses basically that on paper look like they line up, but they really didn't. And the type of employees we needed to hire for them, the expectations we had for them, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, we got hung up. We brought a guy back and we said, we're going to let this guy own it. At the beginning of 2023, we're going to let this guy own it. If he doesn't want to own it, we're going to find subcontractors, and the subcontractor is just going to handle it, and we'll figure out the dismantle from there, what the future is. Do we stay with subs? Do we give it to the subs? What do we do? Do we just tell the customer, sorry, thanks for your patronage over the last few years? And anyway, we kind of had a mess of a week, probably the worst week I've ever had in business. In July of that year, we had storm come through, blew the roof off of our building, flooded our offices, like huge thing. We were completely displaced, moved offices to my basement, moved operations to a temporary facility that we had. That was on a Saturday. On Tuesday, the entire mow crew left. They pulled the truck into this temporary facility, which I was not at. And at 6 o'clock, we got a text from one, 7 o'clock, a text from another one, 8 o'clock, a text from another one. So we're scrambling, trying to find subs, trying to find the solution. What are we doing? We knew we weren't going to rebuild it because we had said if this specific person was no longer a part of the organization and running it and keeping it going, that we were going to sub it out. So we found subs. We found two different subs. We interviewed. We ended up only missing 2 days of mowing that week because of that. And so we subbed it out. That relationship worked really well. But in our process, we literally told the subs, if you do well and you're a good fit, we will give you these accounts. So beginning of, I guess it was March, we did some paperwork with the lawyers to protect our interest in the fertilizer through non-competes, non-solicits, and gave up all of the mowing except for about 6 relationships that we were trying to protect on some higher end commercial stuff. And the rest is history. And now I'm just trying to sell lawnmowers because we have so much equipment that we don't need it anymore. So it's been a huge relief, and it's changed the business. And when you can actually focus on what you want to do and you don't have those distractions, it's amazing how quickly it goes up. So after we got those subs out, that's basically aeration season. And in the fert and weed game, aeration season is a big deal. We had historically always done about $60,000 in aerations. And last year, when we put all of our energy into it, marketing it, upselling it, preparing for it, et cetera, and we weren't distracted by mowing, we doubled that last year and did $120,000 in about 6 weeks of aeration and overseeding.
Wow, that's insane. And obviously that's way bottom line profit margin versus the mowing and the maintenance. So yeah. A couple things I want to dig in there, like that jumped out at me first, going from mowing to equipment distributor or dealership, pretty impressive. Like if you're looking for some mowers, Steve may be your guy in upstate Nebraska. But all kidding aside, the thing that really struck me about what you just said is you literally had 2 or 3 guys basically in one day quit. That was your total workforce for your mowing. Mm-hmm. And very similar, obviously we're not on a pedestal here. We all make some mistakes along the way, but I don't know if I've ever even told you the story, but literally at one point at Callahan's Lawn Care, I had about a third of my mowing maintenance crew literally in one night, literally leave the company and try to literally take my clients. They started their own business. And in the delusion of that, I thought the right move was to get on the truck by myself and try to mow 3 crews worth of mowing. Now, obviously, you know how that ended. Fast forward about a half a week later as I'm killing myself, and I'll never forget because it was on Mother's Day weekend when it hit the proverbial fan, where I literally almost died, just like physically and mentally. The same guys, unofficially, we're going to say here on Facebook Live, but definitely did, came in and smashed probably 8 to 10 of the truck's windows and ripped all the tablets out of the dashboard. They came back 2 to 3 days later and stole half or a quarter of the handheld equipment. And I was so focused on trying to get the work done, I was missing the big picture. Where I got to give you credit in that scenario, you probably as a business owner be most likely tempted to jump on the truck and try to make up the work and figure it out, right? And we did just exactly what you said. Like when it got real bad, and I obviously couldn't get 3 trucks worth of lawns, I pulled some of my fertilizer techs over because we were on a waiting list job for a week or two behind. No one would know the difference. They got pissed off too because that wasn't their jam, and a bit of divas. You nailed it. So I guess what was that thought process in there? And I think there's a nugget to be learned if you're watching this. That's really cool that you didn't take the instinctive jump back on the truck, but you said, hey, let's wait a day or two. Let's figure this out. And whatever happens, happens. We can be delayed. But at the bigger part of the business like that, that's pivotal. I mean, I'm really, really impressed. I didn't realize that's exactly how it laid out, but that's huge.
Yeah. So I had heard this story from you before, and I had heard, working with Jonathan and Jason and all these coaches and everybody that I've worked with, right? Like the instinct is to go put out that fire. But realistically, we recovered from that in 2 days because I was on the phone calling somebody. Now, I mentioned that Ted was the guy who got me in all this. I called Ted. Ted's like, there's these 3 guys that are knocking on my door, want sub work. Here's their numbers. Ted's the one who threw that Hail Mary pass, and I caught it. And we mad credit to him, and I'm forever in debt to him because of that. Because I don't know what we would have done. I mean, we would have probably just sent out letters or emails saying that we could no longer service it. But locally, there's a lot of people that were business owners that I work with and network with and are friends with and stuff. And they're like, you probably just need to get on the truck, and through the chaos of the building and everything else, it'll show that you're there. And I'm like, no, that's not how our company runs. Like, I need to be either hiring these people, available for interviews on a whim, calling subs, whatever that is. And if I'm on a mower, like I'm missing phone calls, I'm going to be playing phone tag. I just can't solve this problem. All I'm doing is putting a Band-Aid on basically lost our whole arm, and I'm trying to put a Band-Aid on it by me jumping on the truck. So in the moment, I'm like, maybe I should go mow. I don't need to ruin these relationships. And I stuck it out, and it turned out to be the right move. That we missed 2 days of mowing, sent out an email. We kind of had a little crutch there to say our building, was destroyed. The whole world saw it because, we were instantly making, lemonade out of lemons. We called the news and got a press spot out of that for the building situation. And so everybody knew what was going on. And we just kind of used that as a reason to skip mowing, so it didn't stir up a whole lot of angry customers.
Love it. Very, very strategic. If you're watching this and you think that's the solution is jumping on the truck, it is not. It really, that speaks just obviously part of the reason why we brought you in as one of our coaches, and we respect you on such a high level. But one of the things you also talked about is you brought your leadership team together, and you were talking about like your strategic plan. These things obviously may have taken a different turn if you didn't have a leadership team and some folks that you're sitting down with. What is that? I guess at Yard Boss, what does that look like? Is it annual planning? Is it quarterly planning? Like what does that look like as far as a meeting rhythm with your leadership team, and maybe even some of the field techs that are fertilizers now? Yeah.
So every Monday morning we have all company meeting. We go over everything from training to, I ask that every technician and everybody in the office brings me a question. Like, what did you run into on the phone or at the doorstep or on the property that you're unsure about? Maybe it's weed ID. Maybe it's, I didn't feel like I communicated well enough to give this customer an answer. We talk about it in that. So depending on how many questions there are, I mean, this may go an hour, but at minimum, everybody's got to have something. And if we're in a hurry, because maybe it's going to be windy or going to rain or whatever, I'll just randomly select 2 people to grab those things for me. So we do that. And then immediately adjourning that is our leadership meeting, which at the current moment is just me and my office manager. And so we go through the plan for the week, what we need to schedule. We'll go through finances, make sure we hit production that day, or excuse me, the previous week, and what the goals are for this week. Any questions that they have, it might be personal that she's just needs to get something off her chest. I mean, it could be anything, right? It's just our time to go through that sort of stuff and handle that. And then we do the annual and quarterly, where we come up with like, what do we need to do better to move this ball faster, down the field. And so we do that annual. It takes about 2 days. And then we do quarterlies that for us take about 3/4 of a day to get through that sort of thing. And then monthly, we do a hard financial review. And where did we win? Where did we lose? What happened? Where's the why? All that sort of stuff. I'm a big believer in the finances are your number one tool in your business, period. End of story. If you don't understand your finances and how efficiency affects that, how product cost affects that, how labor affects that, you can't do anything else. You can't go buy another mower. You can't go buy another truck. You can't hire that next person if you're not really in tune with the finances. And a lot of that education came from Jason Kopp and working with him through roundtables and budgeting seminars and a ton of work I've done with him to really hone that in. I'm also a very data-driven guy, and there's a lot of people that are not data-driven and high fact finder. And that's, I with the clients I work with on the scale side of things, like that's the first thing is like, let's dial these numbers in and let's make sure you understand this, because don't ask me if you can hire your office person, because I don't know if you have the money to or not.
Yeah, and I think one thing, in obviously you got a pretty large company, so I'm not saying that you don't, but it's interesting with fertilization and weed control, you really don't need that huge overhead. You don't need multiple managers. You don't need 50 people in the office. But even with a large company, but low overhead, not a huge office managerial staff, it's interesting. A lot of people that I talk to, like, well, it's only myself or me and an admin or two admin, or myself, an admin and operations manager. But you're still going through that annual and quarterly planning. You're still having that weekly meeting and building that communication. And I think that's really something that I would attribute to from the outside looking at your success. And I think that's one of the things that we see where a lot of companies struggle, that they don't see the value in that because they're small. They're like, oh, we're just not big enough to do that. But obviously you're resonating. That's the reason why there's success. And we're having that weekly rhythm to actually support the team. As you've gotten, obviously, a kind of a front end loaded question, but obviously working in with the Simple Growth Masterminds, where we bring in the 8-figure business experts. And I know you had a lot of this dialed in already, but really that mission, the vision, the core values that you're eventually really hiring, training, and firing to. I think there was probably a little bit of clarity that you gained when we went through those exercises from the initial. But can you speak a little bit to the culture? And I know you had an event that took place here recently with a long-term employee, but what does culture play in a lawn care company? Because I think a lot of people look at like culture in a lawn care company. What is that? Like, this isn't like this, like emotional thing. It seems a little touchy-feely. Like what does core values and a mission have to do with running a landscape company? But I think when it really gets to it, past that 7-figure mark, and really before, if you're lucky enough to figure it out, it's a game changer.
Yeah. So I've dumbed down core values when we bring on a new employer, we're interviewing somebody, is by explaining this to us. Everybody says they want good guys on their team, right? But nobody knows what that good guy is. They just like, oh, Randy's a great guy, right? He's our star, but what is that? And that's how I describe it. And then we go through our core values of what they are. And we're like, yeah, you're client focused, you're knowledgeable, you have fun, you have integrity. And we go through all that. And that's really what it is. And we have made 2 big fires in the last year because they just were not core value fits, and they were eroding our culture, and they were making it a miserable place for everybody else to work with. And that was really big when we started working on the mission, vision, values. And it took some time to like implement that. That stuff doesn't happen overnight. You don't get good culture because you put sodas in the fridge, right? You don't get good culture because the boss comes into the office when you hit your goals and blows up a confetti cannon, right? It's like a million little tiny things that you're constantly working on to build that culture. It's being available for your team. It's having the solutions. It's, I've heard of some people that like the guys are complaining about a pressure washer. Like, we got them a new pressure washer and we boost them around. Is that like huge culture? It's just all these little tiny things that add up that create culture. And it's crazy. And I was telling you before we started that we had a very significant cultural win last week. So my office manager, who is pivotal role in running this company, has been with me forever. She got headhunted by a very large organization to run an office at their branch. And she actually gave me her notice on Wednesday of last week. And it was one of those things that I was like, man, this sucks, but I'm totally stoked for you. Like, you're happy about this. Like, I mean, the benefit package was unreal. Everything under the sun: eye, dental, vision, health insurance, life insurance, disability, like everything.
I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, everything. It was unreal. And so she's been a key to getting everything on track, and she's really the glue that holds everything together, to be quite honest with you. And so we started hiring, put ads up right away. We had some good candidates come in, and about 8:00 Thursday night, she calls me, and I'm like, what's going on? Sounds like you're in tears. She goes, I can't leave. I love this place. I love working for you. I love the guys. I love the culture we've created. I love everything that has happened in the 2 years and the transformation that we've made in that. And she was a pivotal role in that story that I just told about the mowing and the building. I mean, her and I were working, I'm not joking, out of my unfinished basement. I was in the process of doing some remodels in my house. We couldn't get desks in my basement because the doors are too small. We literally put these doors that I had taken off on top of file cabinets to make desks for this temporary office. Her and I are solving that mowing problem till 7-8 at night in the basement of my house, because that was the quickest way to get us set back up. So like, that's the type of stuff that she was. And she just came to me and she goes, I can't. I'm going to call this new place and I'm going to tell this new place that I can't work for them. It was very eye-opening, and it was a pretty emotional conversation to have, that she, was turning down this big opportunity to stay somewhere where she loved. And I know her husband. I've gotten to know her husband, and I ran into him on Saturday, and he goes, yeah, there was something tickling my brain that said that she wouldn't be happy over at the other place. But, as a husband, I support the decisions and help her weigh things out. So I was pretty stoked about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's, and I think I'm assuming a lot of it is the clarity of creating the organizations. I'm assuming that maybe, did she have any part of setting up the systems in the different processes in the business, the operation systems?
Yeah, she sits on the leadership team and she makes all those decisions, and we bounce stuff back and forth daily and in these meetings. And I mean, it's much of her baby as it is my baby, right? I mean, because she makes that. I mean, she'd come to me and she'd be like, I don't know if so-and-so that we hired is going to make it. And I'm like, well, what do the KPIs say? What are we, and she makes those. She does pretty much all of our hiring now. I mean, on certain roles, I tell her to schedule a second interview, and I want to put my final stamp on it, but she does the majority of the hiring. So like, as she described it, it's like, these are my children, some of the people that are working for us. And it's like, they always say that work wife, work husband, right? So she's like, it's just like I was leaving. She said it was like I was getting a divorce and I didn't want one.
Wow, dude, that's phenomenal. So if you're looking at this, culture will keep the place intact. I kind of off topic, but kind of tied back to this. I was listening to new audio book, I believe it was by Ryan Dice. And Ryan Dice owns Digital Marketer and several, like, he's got about a $200 million portfolio. But it struck me is funny is that it's knowing you well enough and the systems that you guys have set up. And you're helping other people in the scale group and the masterminds when they're asking around the systems you guys have built. Good people, basically, how did it go? So it was basically, good people don't fix broken systems, but broken systems break good people. And now you've got an amazing asset here. So if you didn't have this in place and you didn't have ownership in there with the leadership team and really going to that BHAG, that big, hairy, audacious goal that Greg Collins talks about, good to great, I'm assuming your team, at least the leadership team, knows where you're going and where you're at and how you're going to get there. So she's bought into that vision. And I got a feeling some of the stability and the systems you've built are really attracting and retaining those A players. Because if you have an A player come in and the systems are broken or they're not any good, they're not going to be able to fix those for you. They're going to end up probably leaving eventually. Right. So it's really cool that the culture you've built and done that. Kind of unscripted as well, but I got to ask you, because the personal transformation over the last probably 3 to 4 months, honestly, is mind blowing. I know you dropped a few pounds, you started working out, a whole lot of other stuff, obviously, but if you wouldn't mind, if it's too personal, you don't have to dive into it, but I'm just kind of curious, what prompted the personal change to get back walking and shed some pounds, change the diet. And, we talked to Jonas Olson and Brandon Peterman, where those guys have made some pretty drastic lifestyle changes as far as like Jonas stopped drinking, he's working out. And he saw some massive personal clarity, not only in his personal life, but business. So I'm kind of curious, there seems to be a reoccurring theme here. And I'm just kind of curious what your journey for the last 3-4 months have been with it.
Yeah, you left out John DeCosmaker and Matt Green as well, doing the same thing. So last November, seeing John's transformation was huge, and listening to his story and how terrible his health was going. I didn't get all that excited about it then. And then in the beginning of the year, full honesty, like if I eat too much sugar, I get indigestion so bad, and I was puking from the indigestion. And so I immediately gave up sugar, literally on the first of the year. And that's the difference that made transformed into the next thing. So then it became this game, like every month, something new and better. So then February, I gave up all of the processed junk, chips and crackers and, all that stuff that isn't that good and you don't really know exactly what's in it. Gave up all that stuff. And then it was like another move in the right direction. And then in April, I started walking for an hour every night. I go out and I walk around this college campus in town. It's roughly an hour walk for me. And so there's a lot of mental clarity in that, as well as, getting moving. I mean, it's nothing crazy. I'm not running. I'm not having a trainer, kick my ass every day, but that little bit of movement changed a lot of stuff. And I just honestly was not taking care of myself. And I had an eye-opening moment where I was literally told, you're not taking care of yourself. Like, you put everything into the business and you need to take care of yourself. Like, you've got this business running, it's doing well. You spent 15 years handling it, yada, 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 let it take care of you. And, not that I've stepped back or anything, but like, it was eye-opening. Like, yeah, I can. I mean, it's not like we're on the verge of big problems every day like it was in the first couple of years, where you just don't even know if you've got money for payroll, or you've got money for this or that, or whatever it is, or whether you've trained the right guy, or there's a lot of things you don't know in the beginning years, and you're just literally grinding every single day. And so I started that. Yeah, I have lost about 40 pounds, that was really not the goal. I just wanted to feel better. I wanted to have energy outside of work. I wanted to have energy in my personal life. I wanted to, wake up on Saturday morning and feel like doing something, rather than lounge around the house and go eat a huge, greasy, sugary brunch, and it has gone really well. And like you said, Jonas getting that, Brandon, John DeCosmaker, Matt Green. I mean, there's probably another dozen more that have done it. Those four have just kind of made a big splash about what they've done, and kind of following their lead and listening to them. Physically, it's appealing on the eye, right? But the impact that they had in their personal life was great, and that was the real motivation for it for me.
Awesome. Yeah. No, congrats on that. Watch out, single ladies in Lincoln, Nebraska. The guy is on the prowl. Sometimes they call him Sevy. No, really proud of you, man. That's awesome. You motivated me to get back on the treadmill when I got back from Cocoa Beach.
Perfect.
It was kind of a labor of love in the morning before the kids get up. So easier said than done. So I really respect what you did there. So just kind of wrap it up. I know you got a really compressed schedule, but I want to touch on that culture piece again and just kind of reinforce that, because I think it's really important. We all know as business owners, it's really lonely. It's like we're stuck on this deserted island. Nobody understands what we're going through mentally, physically. A lot of times we really stop taking care of ourselves because that business just literally sucks the life out of us. The cool thing is, like, you built such a culture that it wasn't other business owners is like, hey, Steve, like, dude, you need to start doing something. Like, you look like you're falling apart or whatever. I mean, you still look good before, but none of your buddies in like, in your inner circle really had to have an intervention. I mean, honestly, it was your team members, because you've created such a culture of care. And I know you lead by care, an example, that the team was like, dude, we got this. Like, you need to go out and like do you for a hot minute. We got this. And that's
Yeah, so that's an interesting story too. Our trip to Florida, they came to me and they said, "You're a little grumpy and you haven't taken any time off. And you're always here, you're always on the phone." And they said, "We want you to go for a week and we're not going to call you. We're not going to text you. We're not going to do anything." And I was a little bit nervous about it. So we went and we had the 3-day mastermind event. And then I took 4 additional days and literally hung out on the beach by myself and, hung out at Cocoa Beach, and not one email, text message, Slack, anything like that. And I get back and I'm thinking, I'm going to work a whole half a day feverishly. 15 minutes of questions to answer. Like, I'm not exaggerating. 15 minutes of questions to answer. And it was just like I hadn't been gone. It's like the most beautiful feeling in the world.
It's crazy, right? So like once you built this culture in a team, like they actually, as you're leading with care, they care about you just as much.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think myself included, like Tuesday, Thursdays, my assistant Andrea is like, dude, go play golf, like go skiing, do something. Like you're going to like literally self-implode, but like working 3.5 days consistently is more productive than 5 days. And I'm going to be doing a webinar tomorrow with Service Autopilot for their members, talking about a cell phone free vacation. So with Simple Growth, I would take 6-7 days off, no issues. They don't ever bother me. Like the team is great. The leadership team runs. But we ended up going to Turks and Caicos, my wife and I, for the first kid-free vacation. So literally, it was a cell phone-free vacation as well. The team never emailed me. They didn't text me. They didn't call me. And I got back, and I don't even know if there was even 15 minutes of questions. So once you build a good team, you got a good culture, and you've got that clarity through those meeting cadences that you've got in there, you're really able to step back. So I'm gonna publicly say this because you got me thinking about it. So watch out, Simple Growth team. I'm going to actually try to do a 30-day quote unquote vacation, whether it's all on the road or not, coming up here eventually in the near future. Cause once you got that team, it's exciting. And, a lot of people talk about exiting the business, and you think of that, that's like selling the business. But another way that I kind of like to look at that recently with a lot of the books I've been reading is it's not necessarily an exit of selling it, but it's an exit from the day-to-day need to be tied to it, and you've built a team that literally can operate without you. Now, there may be some things with the finances here or there, like you said, 10 to 15 minutes a week. Those may be things that escalate and need to be, checked off. But for the most part, I'm just really excited. Thank you for your time. But I love that story that your team was leading with care and said, "Hey, Steve, go take care of yourself. We got this."
And that's actually been a goal of ours for a few years. I came to the team and I said, "I've been doing this since I was like 13 or 14 years old. I have a feeling that by the time in 5 years, by the time I'm 40, that I want to do something else maybe." And I don't know what that is. Is it another location? Is it a real estate? Is it consulting and coaching? Is it, what is it? So my goal is to empower everybody here to run with the thought that in 5 years, I may be here for, 3 to 5 hours a week, and you guys can just handle it. And we have systematically driven towards that goal. And when we get there, I may still be involved in it. I may decide I still want to be involved in it, but it's kind of driving toward that. One of the books that really got me thinking about that is the E-Myth. Putting the systems in place, empowering the people, finding all that sort of stuff to start realizing what we needed to do to get there.
Awesome, brother. Can't thank you enough. Most people call him Steve. We call him Sevy. Brother, just dropping a knowledge bomb. Appreciate it. SG Rock Weekly Talk Show coming back at you next week with another industry leading expert breaking down your business culture, finance,